Hey, sweet friends. Thank you for joining me for the third video in our full tutorial series of how I made this Disney World themed set. Now, we've already done the 2022 Mickey head cookie. We've already done the castle silhouette. And in this video, we're going to be talking about how I made my own sprinkles for this set. Which, first of all, it did save me money making my own sprinkles because I didn't have to buy sprinkles specifically for a Mickey themed set. But also, I was able to continue that cohesive look that I really strive to have for every single set because the colors matched exactly to my cookies. So if you've never made your own sprinkles before, let's get going and I'll show you how easy it really is. Welcome to Rock City Cookies, where we talk about all things cookies. If you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button and click the bell icon to be notified when we upload a new video. Thanks for watching. On the Mickey-inspired cupcake, I knew I wanted to have sprinkles in the frosting of my cookie cupcake, which meant that I had to make my own sprinkles for this to happen. Because like I said, I wasn't going to spend money on sprinkles that I might never use again. And the likelihood of getting sprinkles to match perfectly would have been non-existent. So I knew I really wanted to make my own sprinkles to achieve the look that I wanted for this particular cookie design. So how do you make your own sprinkles? It is really easy with royal icing. And this can be for any cookie that you're doing, any design, any set themed, you can make your own sprinkles by using royal icing transfers. So what I like to do is I like to have a piece of cardboard and then I use acetate. And I will link the acetate that I use in the description box below. I get mine on Amazon. It's really easy to use. You can just cut whatever amount that you need and the roll lasts forever. So I get a square piece of cardboard and then I get some of my acetate and I tape that acetate to the cardboard. And the cardboard is just there to give me a firmer background because acetate is flimsy. Let me show you. Hang on. This is my microphone's not going to like this, but acetate is really on its own. It's very flimsy. So to me, I don't like to necessarily work with just this because it is so flimsy. But if you attach your acetate to something a little bit thicker, in this case, a piece of cardboard, I just tape it on the back. And then this is a much better surface, in my opinion, to work with because it isn't so flimsy. It has some strength to it. That way I can move it on and off of my work area of the surface wherever I am. And then I can also put this under a fan and I don't have to worry about it blowing everywhere while my royal icing is drying. Whereas this is so thin and there's no weight to it that if you put this in front of a fan, you are going to regret it because it will start blowing everywhere and you'll either mess up your royal icing work or even if the royal icing is heavy enough to hold it down at the beginning, once it dries, it typically won't hold it down anymore. And so altogether, this is a messier process for me than if I just take the time and I tape down my acetate to a piece of cardboard. Another perk to the acetate is that you are able to reuse this. You just clean this and sanitize this because of course it's not, your royal icing isn't touching the cardboard at all. It's only touching the acetate. So I don't reuse this forever. I typically will just reuse it a couple times and then I will throw it away and I'll keep my cardboard and reuse my cardboard, but I'll just throw the acetate away and then I'll start with a new piece of acetate. But really and truly, this is a very easy surface to clean and sanitize to use more than once. Take this and make it into this of whatever surface or something heavier, just whatever works for you. But I definitely recommend giving your acetate a good background before you start working. I have also done royal icing transfers on parchment paper. Again, it's the same thing. If you aren't careful, you are working with a really thin background. So I like to put something behind it as well. There have been times where I've just used a baking pan and I've attached my parchment paper or whatever paper I'm using to the baking pan with some tape. And then that way, and then I just move the baking pan on and off of my work surface as I need it. So that's another option for you. I typically like acetate better than parchment paper just because I think it dries faster on the acetate than it does the parchment paper, but really just use what you have. So if you're doing this for the first time, you might might want to try it on the parchment paper because that's what you have. And if you think that you're going to do this more often and with other sets, then it might be time to invest in some acetate, which is really inexpensive. So that being said, I did all of my Mickey heads on one of these. And with Mickey heads, it's really simple. You just need a thick black icing. You're going to do his head and then his 2 ears. I obviously did not project an image to do this because it is such a simple process with a Mickey head. However, if you are doing a sprinkle or a royal transfer of any kind that is a little bit more detailed, then definitely you can always project an image onto your workspace, onto your acetate, and then trace it and do it just like you would a cookie, but it's just the royal icing. And then you let that dry. Or a lot of people will print a pattern or a design directly onto a white sheet of paper. And then they stick that white sheet of paper underneath their acetate. And then they just trace the designs on top of the acetate, following whatever size they need on the white piece of paper. So that's a way that you can definitely do royal icing transfers or sprinkles. If I wanted every single one of my Mickey heads to be completely uniform, then I could have easily printed Mickey head pattern onto a piece of paper, printed that off so that they would all be exactly the same size, and then use that as my tracing pattern. But I didn't feel like I needed to do that for this set. So I did Mickey heads, but I also wanted to do some actual sprinkles that are just itty bitty pieces of colors to sprinkle onto the top of the cupcake cookie. So to accomplish that, I did just do lines of colored icing. So I knew my frosting was going to be white, so I wanted to do lines of color, sprinkles of color that were black, red, and yellow. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to just drag my icing and just create lines of color all the way down a piece of acetate. Now, I love to contradict myself all of the time. So here I'm not using a cardboard background on this piece of acetate. And the reason for that is because I was being lazy. I didn't have a piece of cardboard that was the exact size that I wanted. So I wanted to use just one piece of acetate for this process. But I wanted the whole piece that I was using. I didn't attach it to any cardboard, but I did go from top to bottom with my lines, and I went from left to right all the way. So I filled an entire piece of acetate with all of these colors. That way I had plenty of sprinkles for my cookies. Now, the reason why you do full pieces of lines is because in a minute, whenever it is all dried, we will break up that icing into little bitty sprinkles, but you don't have to do little bitty sprinkle marks right now. You can actually do full lines of icing and then they will break apart later. Now that my icing has dried, this royal icing transfers have dried, these sprinkles have dried, it takes several hours. So I highly, highly recommend if you're doing a royal icing transfer of any kind, or if you're making sprinkles, whatever you're doing here, you want to do this process early on in your cookie decorating because it does take a while to dry. And if you're wanting to use those elements for the detail work on top of your cookies, by the time that you get to that stage, you need it to be dry. So I typically will do a royal icing transfer either before I flood my cookies or as soon as I'm done flooding my cookies. That way, while my flood is drying, before I have a chance to do any of the final touches on my cookies, the detail work, that the royal icing transfers, these sprinkles, are having plenty of time to dry so that they will be ready for me when I need it. And you know when your sprinkles, when your royal icing transfers are dry, because they will pop right off of that acetate or even that parchment paper if you're using parchment paper. So it is dry as soon as it pops right off. In order to pop off your sprinkles, you can easily use a palette knife. Any kind of flat edge will pop those sprinkles right off, and you can even use your hands. It's a really, really simple process. So after you have all of your sprinkles off of the acetate, I tend to kind of put them in a bowl so that I have them ready to grab for when I'm decorating my cookie. All of these Mickey heads went into a little bowl, but also we want to now do something with these lines, these strips of colored icing. So we need to make these long lines of icing into small sprinkles. Again, it's so easy. So I'm going to use a palette knife and I'm going to scrape through all of the lines to start breaking them up and to get them unattached to the acetate. Once all of my lines have been broken up and off of the acetate, then I just kind of gather it all in the middle, and with my fingers, I start breaking up the icing so that it's in smaller pieces. pieces. And you just continue that process until you get the size of sprinkles that you're looking for. I cannot tell you enough. This is an easy peasy process. It's intimidating if you've never done it before, but once you have made your own sprinkles or your own royal icing transfers, you will see really and truly how easy it is. So I hope I took away some of the fear for you guys on how to make your own royal icing sprinkles. And I'll show you in the next design how we put those sprinkles onto an actual cookie. So next up is our cupcake cookie with our custom made royal icing sprinkles. That video will go live in just a few days, so I hope that you join me there. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.